Oh no, Chucky, don't tell me you got a divorce. You should look at the NECA Toys Bride of Chucky Ultimate Chucky figure. The world's most notorious doll is back on the rampage, but this time he's met his match. His old flame Tiffany, who with marriage in mind rescues his parts from a police impound and breathes new life into the little guy. But will she still want his homicidal heart after he cuts her down to his size? So begins a hilarious new adventure filled with gruesome splatter, murderous mayhem, and laughs galore. Seems Chucky isn't so lucky after all. Although we have seen Tiffany, so maybe him being packed on his own, he's lucky after all. Before we get a closer look at the single pack Ultimate Chucky from Bride of Chucky, let's grab the tape measure and see how tall this little guy stands. This one's a bit of an oddity to me because I never realized that Chucky was sold on his own. I always just assumed he was packaged along with his bride. Needless to say, I did find this from a reputable website and picked it up the moment I discovered it. Either way, though, Chucky stands in this case about 3 1/4 inches in height, or the figure is going to be about 10 centimeters tall. Of course, when it comes to this Chucky, the set I'm more familiar with is the one that got packaged with both Chucky and his bride, Tiffany. The difference in lot, by the way, is that original dual set of Chucky and Tiffany was dated from 2018. The one that I just recently picked up that had Chucky on his own was 2020. So based on that, that's 3 years ago, and yet somehow this single release of Chucky flew right under my radar. Other figures we can also use for comparisons. Here's what they look like with the original Ultimate Chucky. And I thought also as well, while we're still on the topic of brides of Chucky, here's also what the figure looks like with the retro cloth release of Chucky as well. So with this release of Chucky, you are losing more than just the bride. Some of those accessories that were packed along with that dual pack, for example, like the shovel, the beaker, and the container of business, all of that is getting omitted with this release. You still, though, get the Eye of Damballa. You still get yourself, of course, the axe, one of the knives, and one of the guns. And, of course, some swappable hands as well. What I'll also do as well is my best to compare this one as well as all the accessories from that earlier set, at least that go matchies. First of all, the figure comes included with a pistol. It doesn't look like there's anything different from the gap of 2 years between the two pistols. They look like they're painted exactly the same. In fact, looking at one to the other, I wouldn't be able to spot any differences between the two. Maybe this one's a little bit darker of a gray, but it's probably just my eyes playing tricks on me, though. The set also, this version of Chucky also comes included with a knife. I'm going to bring in the other knife, a serrated knife, maybe good for making sandwiches. You want mustard with that? Oh, right. Wrong franchise. The knives themselves, blade-wise, they look to be exactly the same. Handle-wise, they also look identical, so there doesn't look to be any differences between the two. This figure release of Chucky also comes included with the axe. The axe, again, just bring in the one we got before. Maybe I would say like the handle seems a little bit more muted of a red than the brighter red that we got before, but it looks like the axe heads. This one also looks like maybe just a little tad bit darker than the brighter silver that we got before. And then the last of the accessories that only come with this release, the figure also comes included with the Eye of Damballa. And of course, we flip it around to the back. You can see, of course, the little chant on the back of it. The Eye of Damballa was also packaged along with both Tiffany and Chucky. This is the original Eye of Damballa. Maybe you could say, again, just looking at it from through the camera at least, this one looks like it's a little bit darker of a silver, where maybe this one is a little bit lighter of a silver, but they're very, very close to one another. The last of the accessories that come included also with this figure, some of which I have already taken the time of swapping out. The figure comes with, first of all, a pair of relaxed hands. Tiny little hands, tiny little sausages on the ends of those hands. This one does have a little gash there on the side. Now, I have already swapped out, popped off the hands, uttered them on either side of the forearms, and I've replaced them already with the gripping hands. The figure also comes included with another gripping hand also as well. Some are a little bit more better suited for, like, example, for holding the knife. The plastic, I would say, I don't think is any bit different between this one and the original Chucky. I will say, like, things like holding knives, it still becomes a bit of a harder time because, again, you're dealing with tiny little digits. Imagine giving a knife, I was going to say, imagine giving a knife to a child. No, that's not what we want to do. But imagine giving a knife to a tiny little figure. That makes more sense. It's a little harder to fit that into his hand. These gripping hands also, by the ones I've already swapped out, are much better suited for holding those accessories. The other thing about that that's rather interesting that gets packed along with Chucky is obviously still the same heads. Now, you can decide for yourself behind, of course, the monitor if you're watching this for yourself. I'm assuming if you're watching this right now, you're probably watching the review. But if you look at the heads, for example, I'm just going to bring in the other heads that are at least of matchies. One thing I will say, though, about the head is they seem better At least this one, when you're comparing again like for like, apples to apples, or scarred faces to scarred faces, I just feel like the ones that we get here for the single release Chucky, again with the 2-year gap, seems a little bit easier to make out the features. There's a lot more tanning or darker red that they've added to the plastic itself. I also think as well, like the hair is vastly better here on the single release Chucky that we did get than from the 2-pack Chucky. Even when you're looking at it from the sides, it looks like the staples are a little bit more brighter and more vibrant in silver. The teeth are also something that stands out a lot more. Maybe not as much with this as an example, but when we look at the defaulted head, you'll see what I mean. So right away, I feel like these are better heads. And again, like just to look at the other one that comes included with, this one has a little more of the hair draping down, and this is the original head sculpt from Chucky. Yeah, honestly, I don't miss the fact that this one doesn't have necessarily the rose on the cheeks. Like this one's gone altogether. Being that he's plastic, of course, whether he's got a human life inside of him or not, or a soul inside, I still think like he should still have a plastic-looking face. And the plastic complexion, I think, looks better on this head sculpt than it does this one. This one, again, just has, I feel, unnecessary red around the areas of the cheek. So right there, I feel like the head sculpts are better. And then when you look at this one, this is the one that, for me, is right away the reasoning why I think this is worth picking up for yourself. I did want to bring in, obviously, the original Chucky so you can see the difference between the two. Right away, you may notice he's got a bottom set of teeth. Now, that also could be chalked up to the fact of just the way they've painted the original figure. But the original figure only seemed to have, from what I can see at least, the top row of his teeth. And then you can also see his bottom lip down below. Whereas this Chucky, the single card release, or the single box release, seems to have both top and bottom teeth. He doesn't have as much red, that's one thing that gets forfeited on the lips. But I would much rather trade that if he actually has a full smile, not just the top of his teeth. It may not very well be just the top of his teeth, but it's just the way it's painted. It looks like there's a lot more of a smile on this newer Chucky than the Chucky we got 2 years before. Again, we just look at it from the sides. A lot more just of a paler plastic, and I feel it looks a lot better with Chucky than on this one. This one just had, I feel at least too much red. So like looking at the two, there's definitely a lot more darker color of the red around the areas of his eyes. He also has as well still the gash on the side of his face, but I feel like the gashes look a lot better on the plastic with this release than this release here. Coloring of the hair, of course, is a lot brighter on the newer one. It's a lot more oranges, a lot more orange tint colors, whereas this one kind of had a more kind of washed out, muddier complexion, at least to the coloring of his hair. So I feel like right there, like the head sculpts are vastly better on this release than on the release we got before. Coveralls seem to be the same. Doesn't look like one's any bit different than the other. I would maybe say like good guy from what little we can actually see before, of course, it's ripped off to the side. It does look like good guy is a little easier to read than it was on the original one. The coloring of the coveralls seem about the same. Maybe this one's a little bit more of a bluer color. The striping of the sleeves, I find at least, look a little more vibrant on the newer one. And just again, spinning around to the back. This one looks cleaner. If that makes any sense. I mean, this guy's been clearly mangled and stitched all back together, but I feel like this one looks a little bit more vibrant. The shoes are also one thing. Now, maybe this one might have a little bit more of a brighter shoe, but I mean, that's just a small thing. And of course, speaking of small things, the figure does have, again, peg holes in the undersides of his feet. So like, for me at least, this head sculpt right here is enough for me to justify why I wanted to pick up this set. I honestly just picked it up more out of curiosity because I already had the set of both Chucky and Tiffany. That I was just curious as to why they would have released the Chucky on his own. But now that I actually have the figure in my hand, still perplexed as to how this guy even missed my radar in the first place. I'm just actually really happy that this one has the improvements and the changes that make this guy stand out more against the Chucky we looked at before. Okay, so for the figure's articulation, it's going to be exactly the same as the other Chucky. Nothing's changed in that department. The head is on a ball post, so it does move up, it does move down, and you can rock it back and forth as well. Head also does rotate all the way around, even though he does have the longer hair. No real issues in that department. Shoulders come out, again, they're about 90 degrees, and you can, of course, take the arms and rotate them all the way around. The figure has a single hinge in the elbow, but at least it allows the forearm to rotate back and forth. And with the hands I've now popped in place, you can rotate those, well, just hold on to the forearm. You can rotate those hands also all the way around. They're on peg posts. There is no upper torso ball joint, but the legs at least have a ball joint. So you can't split the legs on Chucky. You, of course, can't move them forward. You can't move them back. So mild swivel at the top of the thigh, single hinge on the knee, a lower leg rotation, little bit of a leg rotation. And the feet are also on ball pegs. So you can rotate them back and forth and up and down as well. Just in case you are curious as to what it looks like with an alternate head sculpt, let's grab a head. Maybe we'll grab this one right here. Just pop the head off. It's easy to do, just like the one we looked at before. Just pops off a very large joystick ball joint. And then again, you're just going to pop the new head in place. Kind of helps, if anything, just to put a little bit of pressure on the top with your palm and just push it down. And that's what the Chucky looks like. I might even have to push that a little bit further down. But yeah, all in all, like nice looking Chucky. It's remarkable out of curiosity more than anything else. I'm just going to make sure I got the head all the way on there. I'm going to have to do that a little bit afterwards. But yeah, it's remarkable that just more out of curiosity's sake, I ended up picking up this figure because I already knew, like I had the set before. This set right here that had this Chucky that also so happened to have the bride. I guess it's a good set, too, to pick up if you have no interest whatsoever to have the figure displayed with Tiffany. Or, like myself, you're just more out of curiosity. You're just kind of interested to see, like, what would they have done differently? Well, apparently they have done a lot differently, more so to cosmetic. Nothing really has been sculpted differently. The accessories are all still the same as the one before. And yet, just with cosmetic changes, this one looks so much nicer than the one we got packaged before. Here in Final Looks, I've got Chucky displayed with I Am Dumbala in one hand and his knife in the other, going solo this time around, leaving apparently behind the bride. Now, I did end up finding this because I'm sure many of you guys have been asking this whole time over the course of this review whereabouts the reviewer behind the camera ended up finding him. I actually was over at Toynado of all things, because normally I would go to Toynado for places like for a place to go to for Motu stuff, Master Universe. Occasionally, I will pick up NECA stuff, but 9 times out of 10, it's usually Master Universe related. I just so happen to be buying one thing there. And of course, as I always do, I just type in NECA to see what they also had stock available. And sure enough, they had this guy with one quantity available. Well, I know like Toynado is a reputable company. It's always a go-to for me when, again, it comes to Master Universe stuff. So I assumed that this wasn't a knockoff. Sure enough, as I had already added this one to the cart and checked out, I went over to eBay, and yeah, sure enough, there were sellers over on eBay selling this one solo, again, as a regular stocked item. And we're talking like US sellers as well. So the question really is that I'm posing myself at least, how was I able to overlook this one altogether? I just assumed, and if anybody had asked me if I wanted to get an Ultimate Chucky, I would have said, well, there's the Retro Cloth release, and then there's the Ultimate Chucky, but in both the cases, they're packaged along with Tiffany. Apparently not the case. Chucky was sold separately, as of course the proof is in this review. Now, whether again, like the circulation of this guy, the lot number says 2020, that's 3 years ago, and yet I'm only now finding out about it. I'm sure at some point I would have stumbled onto this guy sooner, at least within the span of 3 years. You would think that I would have found this guy, and yet only 3 years later am I actually finding out that this guy even existed in the first place. What do you guys think of Ultimate Chucky? Sold separately, I might say. And are you as surprised as I am that this guy even exists in the first place? I'm sure there's probably going to be comments down below in the comment section. Oh yeah, I've had the single-carded Chucky for a while. In fact, I'm actually surprised that you're only now reviewing him. I don't know. He's never been in a comic book store that I can say at least. He's always been packaged from what I can see locally along with Tiffany. And of course, checking around to the other places where I normally buy all of my NECA figures, I've never once come across this Chucky. Very, very strange. Either way, though, if you guys are interested, again, Toynado had one of them, so I don't know if the likelihood if they have any more in stock, but again, I'll put the link down below. Or again, like maybe this might just be enough to get you guys searching around if you're interested to get this Chucky on its own. If you guys certainly enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, certainly do want to stick around for more. We might very well look at some more Chucky figures. I have a sneaking suspicion. But to make sure you're not missing out on any of the content this guy's posting on a regular basis, make sure you're hitting the 2-step process. Step 1, hitting the subscribe button down below. Step 2, turning on the bell notification. And I suppose the also included Step 3, make sure you're coming back here on a regular basis. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.